Before the start of the meeting, could we have representative from Albany Patrons be up here to be recognized for their 2018 championship, right? Yeah. 2000, no, it turned 19, but does it consider 2018 when the season starts, right? So it's 2018? Slash 19. Because the season starts in 2018. So we'd like to bring them up. I think Miss Love carried the proclamation. Recognizing their accomplishment in our city, bringing a championship back to Albany.
Yeah. You want me to take a picture? Yeah, sorry about that.
I'd like to call the order for Albany Common Council meeting Monday, June 17th, 2019. Can the clerk please call the roll?
Mr. Anani,
Present.
Ms. Aplears, Mr. Ballerin,
Here.
Mr. Conti, Mr. Shedd, Ms. Fahey, Ms. Farrell, Mr. Flynn, Mr. Hoey, Mr. Igo, Mr. Johnson, Mr. Kimbrough, Ms. Love, Mr. O'Brien,
Here.
Mr. Robinson.
Here.
Twelve present, 3 absent.
And will people please rise and choose? Say the national pledge allegiance, and then after the pledge allegiance, a moment of silence. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Before we deal with our regular agenda, Mr. Conti. Is there a second? All those in favor? All those opposed? Motion passes. Mr. Robinson, sorry. Mr. Robinson.
Thank you, Mr. President. I notice Resolution 34.6119R and ask for its passage.
Thank you, Mr. Robinson. Can the clerk please read the resolution?
Resolution honoring Vera P. Michelson and naming Pennsylvania Avenue between Livingston Avenue and Beverly Avenue in the city of Albany, Vera Mike Michelson Way, in her honor.
Thank you. Is there any discussion on the resolution? Mr. Robinson.
Thank you, Mr. President. This is a great honor for me on this evening. I grew up around the corner and still reside around the corner from Miss Vera Mike Mickelson, and she was always a strong advocate in our community. Bishop Desmond Tutu said that if you are neutral in situations of injustice, you have chosen the side of the oppressor. If an elephant has its foot on the tail of a mouse and you say to that mouse you are neutral, the mouse will not appreciate your neutrality. Many of us know that Vera Mickelson was not a person to stay neutral wherever there was an injustice. She gave her voice to those who were voiceless. She gave her strength to those who grew weary in the fight. I had the privilege of not just knowing Mike as an activist or a community organizer, but as a neighbor. She took pride in her community and convinced others to take the same pride. Well, whether it was making people pick up garbage they had dropped, or making sure political candidates walked her community to engage with those they wanted to represent. She ensured that her community in West Hill wasn't left out of the equation. Growing up, Mike was able to convince many neighborhood children, including myself, to interrupt their play, to help put lawn signs and ask if we knew about the candidates who were running for various offices. It is in hindsight that I see that this was her way of teaching us that we have to know who is leading us and we have to become a part of the conversation. This street renaming will serve as a reminder that we cannot remain neutral, but every day we must take up the mantle and continue to fight against injustice.
Thank you, Mr. Robinson. Mr. Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. President. I didn't know Vera as on a personal level. I believe I met her at the YMCA, and she just came in and turned the TV off of Sports Center. So I thought she worked there, and then I found out that she didn't, and I went over and whispered in her ear. I said, hey, I was watching that. And so that started us talking, and I know a lot of times we seem to be on different sides of the opinion, but one of the things that I truly respected about her is that she stood up and advocated and fought for issues that really she didn't have to fight for. So, you know, people who fight it, and I mean everywhere. Everywhere you went and it was issues on the table, and especially inner city issues, she would pop up. So as I got more active, I grew to have a lot of respect for her, and I was saddened when I heard that she passed away, and wanted to say something at the memorial that they had for her. So, you know, I wanted to take this opportunity to say that I appreciated her effort. We had a lot of mutual friends, people that I respect. I have a great deal of respect for. They had even more respect for her. So it wasn't easy. I mean, it wasn't hard for me to begin to see who she was as a person. And I just wanted to be able to say that I appreciated her effort. It was much needed. And I hope that her energy continues on, and her effort is reach one day, that it could be justice for everybody. So great job, Mike, as you would prefer to be referred to, and I'm gonna see you when I'm gonna see you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Further discussion? Mr. Ballard.
I know we have some of the family members here, and I want to thank you for sharing her with us because she was a passionate person in our community, as everyone here is saying, but she was also genuine. She genuinely cared about her neighbors. She genuinely cared about those who were being oppressed, and she stood up for it. And she had the moral courage to stand up for things we think today seem normal, but 20, 30 years ago were not. And she stood up when others didn't. She made others stand up when maybe they had a little bit of fear. So I want to thank the family for being here. I want to thank the family for sharing her with us. And I want you all to know that we miss her, appreciated her, and are all a little better for knowing her. So thank you.
Ms. Fahey.
Thank you, Mr. President. I have so many fond memories of Vera Michelson. And, you know, just as you were saying, she always seemed to pop up. Well, she was always present, especially when there was an issue that had to do with our underserved communities. And she was just always such an important voice for those communities in particular. I have many memories of her being involved in our years of discussion about turning to becoming a more community policing oriented city. And she was very active in that, always coming to council meetings and speaking out. She's also very involved politically, working very hard to get good representatives elected. She's someone who really is unforgettable and played such an important role in our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Fahey. Any others? I like to just say this. I like to, you know, everybody has a lot to say for Mike, and I'm not going to repeat it because over and over we know the type of person she was. I just like to thank her for challenging me to be better, challenging our city to be better, and challenging everyone to look inside themselves and be better. And I'm gonna miss her. It's tough for me to talk about people when they're gone, but she was a jewel of this city, and all the compliments and the recognition she received is more than I'm just happy that this council is recognizing her work, and all those in the city have recognized the things she's done for Albany. And I like to also thank her family for allowing her to be who she was and will always be. And I know I speak for many people. Mike will never, ever be forgotten. Thank you. And with that, all those in favor? Oh, I didn't even, sorry, Ms. Doche.
Thank you. I just want to say a few comments. I knew Vera for, I think, over 30 years. She was just beautiful inside and out. I will always remember her smile and her laugh. She was so human while being a superhero, unflinching in the interest of justice. She was an energetic worker bee and a leader. She never looked for the spotlight, but she shined the spotlight on others and on injustice. And I personally will miss her greatly.
Thank you. Mr. Kimbrough.
I too would like to thank the family for loaning us Vera for the time that she was with us. Many people don't know that Vera was a part of a trio that's responsible for me sitting in this seat right now. Barbara Smith being one of them, and Brother Youssef, and pushing me to be better. She always put people first before herself, which we all know, but everyone's leaving out how funny she was. Vera was, like, funny, and if you weren't doing right, she got after you. And I appreciated that. She was the driving force behind me and the many of folk. I mean, she get after you. She get ideas, and always, whether it's Roots or Path. I remember starting with Path, where we were making sure the kids from Livingston Middle School could get home because they were having some issues over there. That's when I first met her and my colleague, Mr. Ballerin over here. But always full of energy, nonstop, and that's what I remember. And you know, there's not a time I'm out dealing with community and working that I don't. She doesn't come to mind. It's that what would Vera do or what would she say? Just I don't know. I miss her. All right. Thank you.
Any more discussion? Seeing none, with that being said, all those in favor, passing resolution honoring Vera Michelson, today, June 17, 2019. All those in favor? Aye. All those opposed? Resolution passes, with everyone being a co-signer on this resolution. Would you like to say a few words? Would you like to say a few words, or whatever?
I want to thank everybody for the wonderful, kind words. I know from knowing Mike all my life that she loved this city, came here in the 60s after graduating from college, and did everything she could to make sure that the city was a better place for people. So what you've said rings a bell with me, and it touches my heart, because it's true what you all said. So thank you for that, and I appreciate Jamel for putting this forward and honoring her, and it'll be fun to visit and be able to see that sign going down Pennsylvania, so thank you.
Thank you. Now getting back to our regular agenda. Public comment. Each speaker is allowed to speak 5 minutes on any subject they choose to speak on this time. At that time, no council members can answer your questions or say anything in response to your public statements. If they choose to do so, common council members will do so later in the meeting. All public comments needs to be respectful, and if not, I will stop the speaker at that time, so let's be respectful. And can the clerk please call the first speaker?
Andrea Iba.
And also, all speakers, when you come in front of us, please state your name and address for the record, and everything is to be addressed to me as the president. Next.
Jean Solon.
Good evening, members of the Common Council. My name is Gene Solon. I live in the New Scotland neighborhood at 16 Prospect Terrace. I'd like to speak tonight about an issue of neighborhood development. The Albany Unified Sustainable Development Ordinance was adopted in 2017 to protect and preserve the city's residential neighborhoods. The 1- and 2-story character of Albany's owner-occupied and tenant-occupied house residential neighborhoods should be protected and preserved. The recent development proposals of 1211 Western Avenue, an 8-story residential tower, and the 563 New Scotland Avenue 5-story residential tower are not compatible with the surrounding homes and neighborhoods. These developments are strongly opposed by many neighborhood residents. Going forward, let us develop, protect, and preserve our safe, friendly, walkable neighborhoods. Thank you for the opportunity to offer these comments.
Thank you, sir. Can the clerk please call the next speaker?
Steve Sokol.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen of the Common Council. Since my last visit here, the mayor has made several statements concerning development. They are wonderful stories, as appeared in the Albany Business Review dated June 4th.
Can you speak? Can you put the mic closer to you, sir, so we can hear you clearly?
In the Albany Business Review dated June 4th, the mayor said that we have changed our zoning code so that it is open and transparent and has resulted in increased development, which is good for all of us. And I don't have any problem with that statement. That's a wonderful story, and I certainly hope that it's true. She continued saying, it results in increasing our tax base so that we can continue to provide essential services for our residents. That may or may not be the case. Subsequently to the interview was published on the 4th. The Albany Times Union on the 12th had an editorial entitled, "Hold Up on This Tax Break." And they start out saying, between all the public buildings and private tax breaks they help fund, Albany taxpayers have been priming the city's economic development pump for years. Now yet another private developer wants millions of dollars in tax breaks for Project Downtown. And this refers to the Pioneer Company's project with the Hilton. In point of fact, with all of the 25 or so major developments that had been approved by the Albany Planning Board, each are expected to go before the city's IDA to seek to enter into a pilot agreement rather than paying the taxes that we all pay. Not just residential customers, but business customers that would be in competition with these folks as well. We also have statements in this article that the project would not have occurred were it not for pilots, and that additional money must be perhaps forked over by the government. I just don't see how this is increasing the tax base. So there seems to be a conflict in the story. The only other point that I care to bring up is the mayor stated every single one of these projects is reviewed for impacts on water, sewer, and stormwater runoff, and they all have to meet requirements so that we are able to move forward and approve those developments. Again, that's a beautiful story, and I certainly hope that that was true. In the case of 1211 Western, that is most certainly not the case. If you take a look at the planning board's decision, they decided on that application to approve with condition. And those conditions also sought approval by Albany County, as well as the Albany Water Board, for a connection to the sewer system. It does not exist. And although details of what the builder may have wanted to do may have been filed with the planning board, there had been no assurance that basic needs of the building had been met in granting that approval. What I would recommend here is that please stop the stories. Not just the 7 stories of 1211, not just the 5 stories of New Scotland. We also need to stop the stories that we are being fed by at least one of our leaders, covering up tracks, defending development by saying it'll be supported by taxes, which are not going to be there, that it will be safe, sound, and secure for the neighbors, for the
You have
city.
1 minute remaining.
And in point of fact, that had not been reviewed. Thank you for your attention this evening. I hope you do take that into consideration.
Thank you, sir. Can the clerk please call the next speaker?
Alana Klein.
Alana Klein, 29 Glenwood, 12208, now 12203. Wednesday the 19th commemorates what is known as Juneteenth, which was the actual freeing of the last of the slaves in America. American Independence Day is not July 4, 1776, not while slavery went on for at least another almost 90 years. We've made some strides in this country, but sadly not enough. I think that's evident with a lot of stuff that's been going on, especially with police interactions, with the rise of social media. Just a couple right here in our own city the past couple of years, Dante Ivey, Elazar Williams, and the incident on First Street. And it's sad that we can't seem to make progress. Some cities are making progress, some states are making progress, but a lot of the rhetoric coming from major places like Washington, D.C. Does nothing but fuel the fire. And I don't know if you saw this recently, but there was, in Minneapolis, there was a court decision. Philando Castile was killed in Minneapolis a couple years ago, and that officer was, I believe, acquitted on all charges. About a year later, I think, a woman named Justine Demond, a white woman, was killed by an officer, Mohammed Noor, I believe a Somali immigrant. And I remember saying to myself when I saw the story, it would be very interesting to see in the wake of the Philando Castile verdict how that turned out. So the officer fired into the car, killed Philando Castile, was acquitted of all charges, or did not face charges, I don't remember which one. Mohammed Noor, it was basically the same situation. Justine Demond called the police because she was a victim of some sort of crime or a break-in or something like that. Approached the police car, and Officer Noor fired a couple shots and killed her. If you haven't seen the story, Officer Noor got 12 and a half years. I'm not debating the justice of an officer getting 12 and a half years for killing an unarmed person. But when the officer that killed Philando Castillo got nothing, and the officer that killed Justine Damon got 12 and a half years, we just have so far to go in this country. And I think it's great what this council just did for Mike. I never personally met her, but I've heard so many great stories and tributes on Facebook in the last couple months. And I'm glad that we took the time to honor someone that made such great strides towards underserved communities.
You have 1 minute remaining, Ms. Klein.
Believe survivors, boycott the NRA, Black Lives Matter. Assalamu alaikum.
Thank you. Can the clerk please call the next speaker?
Nancy Benedict.
My name is Nancy Benedict. I live at 31 Forest Road in Delmar. Now, this Friday, Channel Albany is supposed to begin a new relationship with Open Stage Media, one of the two access TV stations in Schenectady. Now, it's my understanding that the main difference, the main thing that they're going to be, Open Stage Media is going to be doing, is putting the TV programs that we make in the studio at Channel Albany on the server. And this job has been done in the past at the New School of Media. Kathy Taylor, who is a member of the PEG Oversight Committee as a stakeholder from the New School of Media. She has been doing this, I understand it, pretty much herself, and she doesn't charge us a thing for it. Channel Albany has to pay $10,000 to Open Stage Media to have Open Stage Media put at least the main job that Open Stage Media is going to do is going to be to put the TV programs on the server and work out the schedule of when the TV programs are going to be on. I think this is a waste of $10,000. I think we could still have Kathy Taylor at the New School of Media doing this job. And now Kirk Daniels, Kirk Daniels, when I talked to him about it, said it would make things better for him because he would not have to do as much work with putting stuff on the server. But the thing of it is, if we didn't have to pay the $10,000 to Open Stage Media, we could use that $10,000 to hire a part-time person to help Kirk, and I think that would be a much better use of the $10,000. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Can the clerk please call the next speaker?
Vincent Raguso.
Good evening. My name is Vincent Raguso. I live at 13 Beach Avenue, and I'm here to protest 1211 Western Avenue, along with New Scotland Avenue, along with Colvin Avenue. This council's been talking over and over and over that they talk about a moratorium, and they want to keep on talking and talking. I think the time has come that we have to stop talking and we have to do an action. I think we should have a moratorium on anything higher than three stories. Western Avenue is going to be 7 stories. without the mechanical stuff on top of the roof. So we're looking at 7.5 stories. The next size that you'll find is down on Lark Street. The other thing I like to bring out, if you notice all these buildings that's been built from 17 to present time, that they're all upscale housing. Where is affordable housing? How can some of the inner wards not demand that some of these developments go to them? You have building with X's, we have building with X's out by me. But again, how can you not say, how can this city shuffle everybody up into the outer city and forget about the inner city? God, I mean, I was born down there myself. And I just can't believe that they put a negative on the inner city. The other thing is this affordable housing. You'll never see it out by us. Again, it's all upscale housing. That's what they advertise the place as, $1,500, $1,600. I don't even believe some of the residents in the 15th Ward can afford that. I mean, most of them are immigrants that migrated out there and were up in age. There's no doubt about it. So I think it's time that we stop talking and say we've got to put a moratorium on some of this stuff that's taking place. If not, then I think we're doomed. I have to say that. The other thing is that you can't find out anything about 1211 Western Avenue because that's my baby. And if I call down there, I do know that I was told that on 1211, which is Sage Engineering, that their new building will be ready at the end of June. So I called down to the Building and Code Compliances. I says, has anything been issued, a demolition thing been issued on 1211? Nothing. You don't hear nothing. I says, how does it stand that we're allowing work to be done and the overhead lines are still, the voltage lines are still up there, even though the fire chief said no work is to be done on that building until the lines are buried. The chief didn't automatically come up with that out of the clear blue sky. He wrote that to protect the fire department, the men in the fire department that have to respond to possibly an emergency at that building. And according to Chris Spencer, nothing can be done. They'll do an occupancy permit, and then the wires have to be buried. Well, if I do an occupancy permit at that particular time, well, the building's already built. What am I going to do with it? So there's so many things wrong with 1211 that the USDO and Chris Spencer doesn't follow. And I don't know what to do anymore. And so, guys, I think we have to stop talking, and I think we have to sit down and say, what are we going to do? Are we going to put a moratorium? Let us breathe. Let us see what the heck is going to happen here. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Raguso. Can the clerk please call the next speaker?
Cheryl Cannon.
My name is Cheryl Cannon. My address is 87 Boyce Road, Nassau, New York. Good evening, Common Council members.
Yes.
Oh,
Can you speak up a little bit, ma'am? Because you do have a
Okay.
soft voice, so
Okay.
we're going to need to hear
Okay.
you. Thank you.
I'm the founder of the Capital District Sickle Cell Support Group. And I've been advocating to improve care for sickle cell patients for over 30 years, beginning with the birth of my youngest son, who died in 2017 at age 34 as a result of acute complications due to sickle cell disease. We have several members of the support group that reside in Albany. And I'm here tonight to urge you to support. We have a Sickle Cell Treatment Act in the Assembly. In the Assembly, it's number 06493, And in the Senate, it's SO 2281. And we have June 19th, this Wednesday, June 19th, is World Sickle Cell Day. That's one of the reasons why I'm here. I'm here to urge you to support the passage of the Sickle Cell Treatment Act bill, and also to ask you if you would consider supporting a resolution for the sickle cell bill. The New York City Council has given us a resolution, as well as the Yonkers City Council. And we're trying to get resolutions from Albany as well as Syracuse at this time. I handed out some packets, and there is information about sickle cell disease, as well as a copy of the New York City resolution. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Can the clerk please call the next? At this time, there is no other speaker signed up for public comment period. So at this time, public comment period is closed. Moving on to our agenda, there's no approval of minutes for this meeting. Any reports of standing committees at this time? Mr. O'Brien.
The General Services Committee met on June 6th to consider the aspects of Resolution 86-102-18R, the equity agenda, as they relate to the General Services Department. I sent out to all of the council members, or Michelle sent out for us, the minutes from that meeting, which are pretty detailed, and they also include a couple of attachments, the Capital District Transportation Committee most recent rating scheme for Albany streets was done in 2017, and the various reports that other city departments, including general services, are required to give us, and whether they're in compliance with those and whether they may be redundant to some additional reports that this legislation might require. I obviously will not go through the whole thing, or it would take the rest of the meeting, but I urge you to read it. And just a couple of things that I do want to point out. The equity agenda views not only streets but sidewalks. We have no rating system for sidewalks. So that was a request made to the General Services Department. And they also request electronic records of complaints. And the only electronic records that we have now are See-Click-Fix. And it was determined that See-Click-Fix is not always reliable, because they had some requests on the current See-Click-Fix that are well over a year old that have been corrected, and then they have some that claim to have been corrected but either have not been or have recurred. So it was not seen as an accurate reflection of the condition of the pace of repair on our streets. The other point was Parks and Recreation. That's a shared responsibility. That department doesn't exist. So we asked DGS to come back to us at a later date with a breakout of exactly how the shared responsibility for parks is enacted, because they advised us that even the water department maintains some of our parks. But the biggest concern that the commissioner raised with us is that he has a 20% vacancy in boots on the ground position. These are the people who actually repair our streets, sidewalks, and prune our trees, and that is obviously impacting his ability to provide services that the city should expect. So we basically invited him to give us some ideas of how he might develop a plan, be it through financing, working conditions, whatever, to address the fact that 20% of the money which we budget for the workers who are going to perform these tasks that we expect to be done aren't there. They leave the department. And So there were a lot of issues which came up. We didn't think that, in fact, we didn't take a vote on it. We basically followed the suggestion of the commissioner and other folks at, council members at the meeting, that we detail to the commissioner things we would like him to report back to us in August, so that we can get sort of a handle on what abilities the department really has to equitably maintain its streets, sidewalks, parks throughout the city. And now that's complicated by the fact, I believe, that the total responsibility for going forward on this particular resolution is being taken from the various committees and entrusted to the law committee. I don't necessarily think that's a good idea. I sit on the law committee, and I know that our plate on the law committee is more than full. So the way, and I'll take advice from the President Pro Tem, but the way we left it was the commissioner was going to get his reports, his analysis together, and come back to the appropriate committee sometime in August. But I guess we will need some direction as to how that committee wants to proceed. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. O'Brien. Mr. Flynn.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Parks and Rec Committee met June 11th to discuss the programs throughout the city, and I believe the one thing is they're not equitably distributed throughout the city. We learned that Hoffman Park has programs consistently throughout the day, from 8 to 12, a break, and then from 1 to 4. We did learn that Livingston Park only has programs from 8 to 12 or 8 to 1, so we addressed that concern. Those are really the two parks throughout the whole city that have programs. We suggested that Livingston Park have programs at night also for the folks. We had a lot of residents from the 5th Ward come and speak on behalf of the programs that were lacking at Livingston Park. But Commissioner Jones was invited. We knew he wasn't going to show up. Justin, the deputy, didn't show up. He had something else, so I guess it wasn't the priority. But so the commissioner sent 2 other people. So we drilled them for about an hour and a half on the programs, and I feel that a lot of us were disappointed right now in the programs that are going throughout the city right now. So Jonathan Jones currently has about 10 to 15 questions that we asked him to address, and hopefully I can get them soon. But the main concern is the programs at Livingston Park needs to have activities for the kids at night, because that's when a lot of the crime and the shenanigans happens with these kids at night. So thank you, and hopefully we'll get back.
Mr. Flynn, will
Yes.
the commissioner be coming back, not coming back because he didn't come, will he be coming to the Park Restoration Committee to address those questions?
I did ask them to address them, and I will be setting up a meeting in the next few weeks if possible,
Okay.
if he's available.
I mean,
I recommend early July, mid-July, to see how they are
and
coming
with,
on those programs.
and with that, just we'd like to know if he's going to be there when you set up that meeting. I think
I
it's
will, yes.
important that our commissioners respond to our meeting request. Mr. Igo.
Mr. President, the Law Committee will be meeting this coming Wednesday at 5:30, the 19th, to take up 2 proposed resolutions. One is pertaining to the keeping of hens. There has been a meeting on that, and I believe there's some sort of compromise. They took my suggestion of making it a pilot project. And the other one is it's concerning vacant buildings and inspections and proof of winterization, etc. So they'll both be taken up this Wednesday. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Igo. Any other reports? Seeing none, Mr. Conti. Consideration. Introduction of ordinances. Did you hold the local law for the record? Thank you, Mr. Conti. Moving on to introduction of ordinances, Mr. Flynn.
Thank you, Mr. President. I noticed ordinance 1262-19 and ask for its introduction.
Thank you, Mr. Flynn. Can the clerk please read the ordinance?
An ordinance amending Article 3 of Chapter 353 of the Code of the City of Albany in relation to the maximum towing charge permitted.
Mr. Conti.
Mr. President, as referred to law committee,
Thank you, Mr. Conti. Moving to introductions of resolutions. Mr. Kimbrough.
Thank you, Mr. President. I noticed Resolution 3962-19R and ask for its introduction.
Can the clerk please read the resolution? Sorry.
Resolution of the Common Council authorizing the execution of an amended and restated payment in lieu of tax agreement with Lumber Street Apartments 4 Housing Development Fund Corp. and ID Arboro Phase 4 LLC.
Thank you. And that is a hold. Mr. Conti. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Duche. All those in favor? Recommendation passed. Mr. Ballard. Motion passes.
Thank you, Mr. President. I ask that resolution number 4062-19R be read and be held for the next meeting.
Thank you, sir. Can the clerk please read the resolution?
Resolution of the Common Council recognizing and honoring Ronald D. Howard for his contributions to the City of Albany.
Thank you. And that will be held until the next council meeting. Mr. Conti. And moving to Commissioner of Deeds, Mr. Kimbrough.
Thank you, Mr. President. I offer a list of names for appointment to Commissioner of Deeds and waive the reading of the names.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Those opposed? Motion passes. Miscellaneous or unfinished business? Mr. Conti. Mr. Robinson.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just want to address two things. The first thing is that last year, me and some community leaders met with the mayor's office, and one of the things that we did discuss was the lack of things to do in our recreational centers. And I think it was myself, Councilman Love, Pleers, and also Johnson, also Dr. Brenda Robinson. And one of the results that came out of that meeting was that we would put park rec aids into Livingston Park, and that did happen on last year. And I heard that it was successful, and it also allowed for, provided some jobs for some of our community members for that, for the summer last year. And I'm praying that we can, after talking to Commissioner Jones, that we can do that, do that again. Also to Mr. Raguso's statement about the inner city standing up for some of these issues on development. That is something that is on me and Ms. Joyce Love, something that we are fighting very hard for, to have equity in development when it comes when development comes to the city, and also for developers to have community benefits agreements in place with the communities that they develop in, so that, you know, some of these issues can be avoided.
Thank you, Mr. Robinson. Mr. Conti. There's a second. Second, all those in favor? Motion passes. Meeting adjourned.